Well, hello again, and today we're looking at this Bush TR230 radio, which was sort of previewed during the previous video about frequency allocations on AM over the years. It was this radio in a way that gave me the idea to do that video, largely because of its dedicated button for Radio 1 on 247 meters, as it was at the time. Now, this layout of radio was based on a previous generation of Bush radio. The TR130 had, I thought, a dedicated Luxembourg button on 208, but I can't actually see any examples of that anywhere. So all the ones I can see online are they have like a band spread on this button here, so they have, as common with a lot of radios of the period, the lower wavelength, higher frequency end of the medium wave is expanded out in a separate band here to make it easier to tune, because there are a lot of stations in that region, including Luxembourg. So whether there was a dedicated Luxembourg button on any of the early sets, I'm not sure. There was also a later version of this, many years after Bush had just become a brand used randomly. And I mean, at this point, Bush was not an independent company. It had been taken over by Rank and was merged with Murphy. I think there's an equivalent version of this which is badged as a Murphy. But there was a later version which was an unashamedly fake retro one, and it was called a TR130 as well, but it wasn't anything like the original TR130. This one then became a VHF band, and oddly enough they put all the markings from the earlier 130 on it. So even though by this time we've got the, you know, Radio 1 and Radio 2, they put Light and Home and Third on it, even though that set was made in 1988. That version, there was even one which was sort of trimmed in fake cow skin. I'm not sure quite what these people were smoking when they did that. I'm sort of tempted to acquire one just for the novelty value, but I don't have one at the moment. Anyway, I think these are quite nice radios, actually. This one was available in either a tan finish or a black finish. This is a black one, which sort of brings to mind to me the sort of vinyl roofing that you used to get on cars of the era, which I quite liked as well. I was a big fan of those. It's got quite a nice sound, I think.
30 gig SIM is just £11 a month.
Although it's got slightly iffy on and off control here.
Tucking some more this Christmas. This is Supermarket Mobile. To switch, pop in store or search Tesco Mobile. Every little helps. And 28th of December,
And that's on the dedicated button for Radio 1, which of course is now mapping to Absolute Radio, which is what occupies that frequency. This is tuned into 1214 kilohertz, and Absolute Radio is now on 1215 kilohertz, but you're never going to be able to achieve that accuracy with manually tuning on these radios anyway. There's a couple of things, as I said, I want to look at on this. One is the intermittency of this control here. The other, apart from general sort of cleanup, is the long wave button sort of, and to some extent the medium wave button sort of flies out when you deselect it. So that's something we probably need to look at, hopefully. And these sort of foul a bit and don't properly pop in and out. And you can see also that this tuning knob is a bit pushed down, and if I press this you can sort of see this whole assembly dip in with it. So there's a bit of mechanical work needed on this, but I don't think there's a lot of audio work, to be honest. So I think what we'll do is we'll get the thing apart and have a look inside it. Now, apparently getting this apart shouldn't require any tools. The idea is that you turn these two things here. I know this bit, you remove the battery clips, or remove this bottom bit, this whole floor, this whole back panel comes off here, bottom panel. Then we can remove the battery, which is chunky PP9 thing. So if you take that out, and then what's supposed to happen is the thing just prizes apart. Not really doing that for me at the moment. Maybe I have to don't see anything else that would hold it in. Oh yeah, there we go. Just have to pull it back a little bit from the top, and then that top bit comes off, and that's it. So it's good news. Interestingly enough, the when we were talking about whether or not you had a tan or a black finish, you can see that the whole cabinet is made in a tan sort of colour, and they obviously just stick this black vinyl thing on very much in the manner that you would with a 1971 Ford Escort, I'd have thought. Anyway, first thing I notice from this is that the ferrite rod is broken in two. Fairly cleanly, always a little bit missing, so that looks like we need to glue that back together. The arrangement for the switch is interesting because it's not like a pot with an integral switch as such. It's got the switch as an external open thing here, so maybe that'll make it easier to fix. I'm not sure if I can... This whole thing being further down here, I can't see why that is unless it's to do with these two screws here, so I might need to take those out. One of the things that is interesting about this is the previous version of this, the TL130, had our old adversaries, the AF117 transistors in, which are known to cause us lots of pain. This version only has two discrete transistors for the audio output. All the rest of them are in this little chip here, and the AF117s have been completely eliminated, for which we can give many thanks. I also noticed that this whole PCB here has got this Pressac branding on it. Now, Pressac are a separate electronics firm. In fact, I think they still exist. So it looks to me like Bush or Murphy or Rank Bush Murphy or whatever they're calling themselves at the time had outsourced the entire production of this to another company, and they just bought this as in as a module and screwed it in, which is probably a sensible thing to do. Anyway, I think one of the things I want to look at is why this bit is so far down, so I think I might need to take this top off here. Reading the manual is sometimes useful. Taking out this nut on the speaker and this screw on top of it then releases this whole assembly here, which is quite good and makes it much easier to work on the whole thing. I suppose we'll have to take the speaker off at some point. So let's have a look at what's happened here. Well, that looks a bit bent, doesn't it? But it looks just warped, really. The interesting thing is this little pointer here, I think, you know, it should be straight. That's also bent. I wonder if there's been a bit of heat applied to this. It's just got too hot and the plastic has sort of warped. Now, can we straighten that? I'm not optimistic, to be honest. And I don't really want to have to get the drive cord apart. You know, I hate having to deal with tuning cords. But it looks to me like getting this off is a sort of essential starting point to fixing this. I mean, this bit looks straight, to be fair. When I see it moving, it's actually just the scale that's moving. The whole main plastic chassis bit is okay. So I think it's just this is warped. So if I can get this out somehow, I think, you know, we can possibly do something with it. Also, I should be able to get in and clean up all this stuff here. And also glue and or heat shrink this this ferrite rod. It's rather difficult to glue that ferrite rod back together, so I've put some heat shrink on it as well to hold it here, because it was just coming apart. There really is not enough. There's a lot of I think a lot of it is chipped away, so there isn't a lot of surface to make the thing work on. This was getting this tuning bit right was a bit difficult, so I thought, well, I'll try. This is bent, and I thought, well, I'll try and straighten it out. I managed a little bit, but not very much. Now the other thing is, the reason it moves around so much is there's two lugs here which hold it in place, and then it's hinged at this end by these two points here, and it goes into this bit. And then one of the lugs on this side is broken off, and that's why it doesn't hold down properly, and there's not much I can do about that, really. But I've done what I can. In doing this, I managed to skip this cord off the off the tuning pointer. Now this has two separate tuning cords. It has one for the pointer and one for the tuning capacitor itself. Fortunately, the one for the tuning capacitor itself was okay, so I didn't have to redo that. This one was a bit of a pain to redo, because it's, to get the friction right, they made it so that you have to go, it said, I think it said, I'll find the diagram, it's 2 3/4 turns around the big pulley of this, and then one round the inner one, and then another 3/4 of a turn around the outer one again. And then there's a springy bit here, there's a spring and a springy bit of plastic that holds it together. I've got that back now and it looks to be in the right place. The big problem was this carrier. Now it does tell you to take the pointer off and then take the pointer carrier off. Now the pointer carrier is this bit, which slots onto here through the, eventually through the scale and holds it on. But now this pointer, which was bent, which I've taken off, is broken in half, so I've got to find something similarly white and about that shape, so probably an old piece of wire of some sort I'll have to find to put back on it now to get that back together. But it's all working. I've cleaned it up a little bit, cleaned the switches and the pots, and yeah, it's just a reassembly job really now, I think.
I thought, well, it's to use sound. Processed. I mean, the main opposition leader, Alexei Navalny, was poisoned last year, isn't?
With gas now from just £15, you're better off with Specsavers. I could have just said that, I suppose.
Really, because we were, I think I was one of the lucky ones to interview them first, I think. And they've done all of that since March, April time. Incredible. They've played 145 shows this year. They've been on countless TV, radio interviews. They've been on short...
Yeah, I'm pretty pleased with how it's gone overall. I've got it all back together now. Replace that pointer with a piece of flexible wire, which I then heat shrinked, or put a piece of heat shrink around. Unfortunately, it seems to have cooled down and then moved a little bit, so it's not entirely straight now, so I'm going to have to get back in and tweak that a bit. But getting these controls aligned was a bit difficult. I think this has had a real whack at some point in the past, which is probably what broke the aerial, and the chassis isn't completely straight, or the metal chassis is not completely straight, and as we know, this sort of scale is a little bit bent. But you know, I think with these sort of age of things, you know, you're looking for best deal possible, and certainly from what you hear, it makes quite a nice sound, and it's a really nice looking set of a good example of a classic Bush layout. And obviously, compared to the 130, it's got an integrated circuit in it, but what did that do apart from replacing the AF117s? And that's definitely a benefit. The output quality is still pretty good, although there's no output transform on this one. I have a feeling that the original 130 did have an output transform, but I'm certainly not detecting any lack of bass. It's pretty good, really. Again, like all medium wave, like all AM only radios, it's subject to obsolescence in the near future, so we have to think of a way to keep them alive. But certainly I'm quite pleased with how this one has turned out.